being here. This morning at the REC conference, we learned some very good news for the state of Louisiana, and that is for the second year in a row, the fiscal year ended with a surplus. So for the fiscal year that ended June 30th of 2018, there was a surplus, approximately $300 million. We won't know precisely until the fiscal status statement is issued and considered by the REC at its meeting in October. So what this means is that the economy performed better than REC predicted, which is obviously what we always had hoped would happen and worked to try to facilitate. There were more jobs, people brought home better paychecks, and businesses were more profitable. And obviously, it should go without saying, this is the kind of progress we want to see, especially when you consider where we were as a state 2 years ago. When I came into office in January 2016, we had a $1 billion shortfall that had to be solved within 4 months. And then there was a $2 billion deficit for the first full fiscal year that started July 1st, 2016. So for the first time in nearly a decade, we have been able to stabilize our budget, achieve predictable revenue, and be responsible with how we budget state dollars. And this is in addition to the fact that we reduced the net tax burden on the state of Louisiana from last fiscal year to this one by nearly $600 million. And you should always note that the REC adopted the forecast based on projections made by two economists, one from the legislative branch and one with the executive branch, using the best information available at the time they make that estimate. Further, the REC includes the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the President of the Senate, a representative of the governor, plus an independent economist. And a unanimous vote is required to adopt a forecast. And there have been some erroneous and quite silly statements, actually, made that suggest that somehow the Division of Administration is privy to inside information, and that is just unequivocally false. There is always uncertainty around revenue projections, particularly in the corporate arena, which has been very volatile over the last number of years. And this time around, it was especially volatile and uncertain because of federal income tax law changes. And there have been a few who even suggested that the work we did in the special session wasn't needed. So let me address that now. The surplus is for the last fiscal year, not the current fiscal year. Had we not done the work in the special session, if we had let the revenue that was coming into the state expire, that $1.4 billion, we would not be in the position that we are today in terms of having a responsible budget that adequately finances our most critical priorities. We were able to do all of that work and still reduce the tax burden on the state of Louisiana by $600 million. Corporate taxes and personal income taxes appear to be higher than forecast, and we hope this is an indication of a continuing trend where we're going to see the economy improve. But that analysis is not yet complete. Severance taxes are forecasted using a $1 per barrel estimate. In April 2018, the average annual forecast for the year was $57.05 per barrel. The actual daily average for fiscal year 18 was $58.60. So this generated a few dollars over the forecast as well. Of note, general sales tax revenue actually came in a little lower than had been forecasted. And the bottom line is this: having a surplus is a good thing. It is not a bad thing. The only alternative to a surplus is a deficit. And if you close a year out with a deficit, it has to be paid first from revenue coming in for the current fiscal year. That opens a hole in the budget for this year that has to be met by implementing mid-year budget cuts. And this is not theory. This is what has happened a number of times over the last several years. So 2 years in a row with a surplus, I can tell you, is a good thing. And you should all be cognizant of the fact that the law already prescribes the ways in which the money can be invested, and that is that 25% of surplus has to go to replenishing the rainy day fund, 10% must go to retiring state pension system debt. And beyond that, surplus dollars can be spent on capital outlay projects in the comprehensive state capital budget, new highway construction for which federal matching funds are available, coastal restoration projects, and the retirement of general obligation bonds. Surplus cannot and should not be used to grow government, but it does make it possible for us to address the infrastructure needs that we have across the state of Louisiana with actual cash on hand rather than having to incur debt in order to pay for those investments. So the economic situation in Louisiana is a far cry from where we were 2 years ago, and that is great news for our people and our state. I'm excited to be able to stand here today and tell you that because of our responsible budgeting, because of the way that we produce budgets that are free from gimmicks and so forth, that we are in much better shape today than we were just a couple of years ago. And I'm excited that we've been able to get to this point, and I'm even more excited about where the state is headed in the future, because I remain convinced that our best days are ahead of us. And at this point in time, I'm happy to take your questions. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have priorities for how you'd like to see surplus money spent above the budget on the UAL?
Well, obviously, we're going to spend all of those dollars in a manner that's consistent with what the law requires, and only on those items. And we don't yet have that priority list ready for you. We will be producing one shortly, and we will do it in consultation with members of the legislature as well. But I will tell you, when you have an infrastructure backlog that's somewhere around $14 billion, there's plenty of need for capital construction in the state of Louisiana, and that's even more the case when you consider the deferred maintenance in the state of Louisiana on state-owned buildings, but also on college campuses. So there's no shortage of needs, and it's a great day when we can satisfy some of those needs with cash rather than having to borrow money to do them. Yes, sir.
Governor, as far as looking ahead to what will be a fiscal session, what's your message to lawmakers in terms of how they can keep this, in your words, the momentum going?
Well, first of all, we just need to all work together. And we need to continue to invest in higher education to make sure, in fact, in education period, whether it's K through 12, whether it's community technical colleges, four-year universities, because the key to maintaining the growth that we've seen in terms of investment, job creation, opportunity in Louisiana is having educated, skilled workers here in Louisiana that instill confidence in those individuals looking to where they're going to invest their dollars. We want them to come here to Louisiana. So the path that we are on, where for the second year in a row we've stabilized funding for higher education, we met our obligations to our top students, and in fact we're funding our need-based aid for higher education GO grants at more than $2 million more than we ever have in the past. That all bodes well for us moving forward, and so we just need to stay on the course that we are on. And I am convinced that better days are ahead and that we will have more announcements such as the one that we're making this morning. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question that's a little bit off topic.
Somehow I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I know. Your favorite. Given what's been reported about what happened at Jesuit High School in New Orleans and what's been reported yesterday about what's happened with sex abuse allegations against the Catholic priest in Lafayette, what, if anything, is the state going to do to investigate Catholic Church sex abuse allegations?
Well, the state will do whatever it always does when it receives credible information that a crime has taken place, actionable information. It will be fully investigated. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Melinda.
Oh, I was just going to follow up. Has the state received anything that you know of?
Not to my knowledge.
So, following up on what you mentioned about investing in education,
Yeah.
you're talking about teacher pay raises. You said it was
Yeah.
a big priority yesterday on your radio show. So, obviously, this is a $1,000 or would be a $1,000 increase for teachers. Some teachers say it's not enough. I guess you would argue probably that this is at least a start.
Well, it's not just a start, it's a really good start. And look, it is overdue, and it's something that is a very high priority of mine. I would tell you it's the highest priority I have going into session next year. And if you look at it, we have not increased the per pupil allocation inside the funding formula for K through 12 education as we wanted to do over the last 10 years or so. That the formula really contemplates a inflationary growth factor of 2.75%. I think that's been done twice over the last 10 years and not at all in the last 4. And so it's time that we do that. Half of that increase goes to teacher pay, but quite frankly, that's not enough, because what we know is 10 years ago, Louisiana teachers were paid at the Southern average. Today, it's about a $2,200 difference between what we're paying our teachers and what the Southern average is. And I think it's a good goal to try to cut that shortfall in half, basically, if we can. So we're looking at being able to fund this growth in the MFP through growth in revenue. And so we know that, for example, the MFP increase by itself would cost us about $75 million. But that would not get teachers a $1,000 pay raise, and it wouldn't get support workers the raise that we want for them either. So we're going to need to invest another $40 or so million on top of that in order to get to $1,000 per teacher and $500 per support worker. I think this is incredibly important, because there is nothing more important to education than having highly qualified and motivated teachers in every classroom teaching our kids. And we've seen what happens elsewhere. We've seen what happened in this state when we fall too far behind on teacher pay. There is such a morale problem caused by that. There are teacher shortages caused by that in terms of certified teachers. And we just know that the consequences are not what we want. And so as we are able to, and we are going to be able to next year, we want to make sure that we are raising teacher pay. And I happen to believe that that's the right amount. It's what we can bite off for next year. But we will also have a plan to close the gap fully over the several years coming after that. And I look forward to working with the school systems, with the state superintendent, with Bessie Board, and teacher organizations in order to move forward so that we can all be on the same sheet. Yes, sir.
You guys built some momentum in the third special session between Republicans and
Yeah.
Democrats and bipartisanship. There's a lot of House Republicans who are not happy with you right now about this surplus. Are you concerned that this is going to halt or slow some of that momentum that you built?
No. And not happy with me because I guess they would rather a deficit. They would rather us open a mid-year shortfall this year. That doesn't make any sense. On its face, that is just ridiculous. That someone isn't happy with me because the economy is performing better, because more people are working and making more money and our companies are more profitable than the folks who make the forecast believe would be the case. That is good news, and any attempt to spin it another way is a pretty desperate attempt by people trying to save face, I suspect. Okay, maybe that was it. Thank y'all very much.